put up a screen share. I did another PowerPoint today. It's not as extensive as the other PowerPoints because I don't think that PowerPoints are super cool. I don't think that other people think PowerPoints are super cool, but I had a pretty good amount of information, and I didn't know. I did get off of the Facebook comments. So like I did the original stuff, I'll try to address those questions as well. So it'll be a little bit less me kind of dictating with the information, and more me kind of drawing from you guys to what you want or need from this topic. So did somebody have an intermittent fasting book? Is that right? Which?
That's Jamie. Jamie and Dawn have it. I don't know what book it is though. She was gonna go grab it and show us.
Jamie, what's the who's the author? Do you know?
I don't know which one she has. I know she started it and then she said she was going to look for it but didn't come back.
Cool. All right, I was just curious. So this came up kind of a little bit organically. I think that we had a little bit of member interest in it, and the staff, we decided that this would be our nutrition topic. I took kind of a break from nutrition last week to talk about the programming, and then we were able to kind of highlight one of our nutrition success stories, which was really great. So that was great. But I'm back here doing the intermittent fasting. So we will go ahead and get started. Let me see if I have my share screen proper. Probably not. So I'm going to have to shrink me, bounce that out. I'm getting pretty good at this. Freeze it. Nope, that's not right. Screw it. Thank you all for your patience. And now I'm going to share screen, and boom, there we go. Great. There you guys. Okay, intermittent fasting. What it is, how does it work, and how do I implement it? I guess I'll just kind of start with the first slide. So basically, we kind of have two schools of thought in two broad schools of thought as far as it goes with nutrient timing. So when I am eating my calories, there are more specific branches of those schools of thought as far as when you're eating specific macronutrients. But right now, we're just looking at when I'm eating calories. And those schools of thought are going to be grazing, where you eat small, frequent meals in an effort to boost metabolism. I use the air quotes with that because nothing really could be further from the truth. And it's a traditional school of thought. Like I can remember when I got my very first personal training certification way back when, before CrossFit, we were taught specifically that if you eat small, frequent meals throughout the day, that was better for you. And I remember, bodybuilders having that sort of like clock. Oh, I need to eat 2 hours, 8 meals. Well, we're going to get into the benefits and pros and cons of that, but just think about the practical applications of eating every 6 meals a day, right? So that's like every 3 hours, roughly, maybe even more frequent than that. Think about preparing the food, eating the food, digesting the food, cleaning up after yourself, cleaning the food. And yeah, a little bit of that can be rectified with meal prep, But the practicality of that is really tough to do that and actually get quality training in between those tiny, tiny windows of eating. So that's just one reason why I think that the grazing is just a no-go. Fasting, basically there's several different types, but to generalize it, we're talking about eating all of your calories for the day, for instance, inside a certain time window. And it is a newer idea, although some of the studies that I can cite here go all the way back to 1934. So a lot of information has been collected on it, even though it's a fairly newer concept as far as dietitians and nutritionists are prescribing. It actually came about because there were studies done on caloric restriction and longevity, which you can find a lot of correlation, especially in mice and rats, with restricting calories and longevity. What ended up happening is the mice were really underfed. So when the researchers would give the mice the food, they would eat all of their daily allotment of food in like one quick sitting, right? So basically they were fasted for 20 plus hours of the day and on caloric restriction. And it's now a little bit difficult to discern the benefits of those mice. Was it coming from the fasting, the caloric restriction, or a combination of both? And we have a little bit more information to kind of shed some light on that. The basic idea of the intermittent fasting is that you are essentially exercising your metabolism. So certain things start to happen inside your body upon the last ingestion of calories. So your blood sugar kind of drops, your insulin levels drop, you start going towards a state of ketosis, and then far into that fasting, you have this cellular regeneration. So kind of what's happening is you're exercising your metabolism. You're stressing it for a small period of time, a very calculated period of time. And as a result of overcoming that stress, the metabolism gets stronger. So if you think of yourself as exercising, you're going to exercise, you're going to do some high intensity stuff in a small window of time compared to the whole day. And then you're going to recover the rest of the time. And that's similar to intermittent fasting in a sense that we just can't fast forever and ever. Like those hormonal and stress adaptive responses that come from the first few hours of fasting, kind of up until 24, maybe even 48 hours, those things are not prolonged forever and ever. So we can't stress our metabolism forever, but we're stressing it a little bit. It's getting stronger like exercise, and it's coming back and it's adapting. The three most studied types, and I think Chad is on this call. Chad turned me on to a meta-analysis of, I think it's 80 studies. I'll check my sources in just a second. It is 80 studies that are mostly randomized controlled trials on intermittent fasting that just recently came out in the New England Journal of Medicine in December. So this is pretty recent meta-analysis of these 80 studies, like I said, that date back all the way to 1934. In those studies, the three main types of fasting that are studied are a single day fasting up to once a week. They found that single day fasting twice a week had detrimental results, but basically a 24-hour window of fasting where you're not eating one time a week. A 5-2 method, the way that this works is 2 days of the week, you are going to drop your calories to about 500 to 700 calories a day. And the best way to implement that 5-2 method is to do it slowly. So on 2 of those days that you deem to be your 2 underfed days, you probably want to start with like 1,000 calories and then wean yourself off. But the idea is in your underfed days, your body is in ketosis for a period of time. And then the daily fasting. So 16-8 is probably the most common. I have found recommendations. This is a question that Andy Peterson had. I have found recommendations that suggest that women should be a little bit closer to 14-10. The fasting does not have the ideal same top end benefits as men with a 16-8 diet. And if you're at all familiar with the warrior diet, that is a 20/4 diet. And what I mean by that is the bigger number is the time that you are fasting, and the smaller number is your eating window. So those are the three that are most studied, specifically in the meta-analysis of these 80 research papers. And I said most of these are randomized controlled trials. So this is good research. So benefits, they can kind of go into categories. So the metabolic switching, I think, is really what is kind of giving us, like, is the umbrella for all of the benefits. And what I'm talking about is that when we eat all the time, our liver is topped off with glucose, and we have higher elevated levels of insulin. So the insulin is a storage hormone, which means that it's pushing fat into the cells. It's pushing anything into the cells, but fat into the cells. And I lost my train of thought. The higher level of insulin is going to push fat into the cells. And it's also going to result in systemic inflammation, like a high level of inflammation most of the time in your body. So what we're doing by fasting is we're going to run out of liver glycogen, and then we are going to basically eventually start to shift towards ketosis and oxidizing, even if you're not totally in ketosis, moving towards oxidizing mostly fat for energy. That systemic inflammation is kind of linked to a lot of bad things. And it's my theory that being in a glucose burning state, specifically liver glucose, for a prolonged period of time is the result of several significant health issues. So that's, like, I think the big thing, the metabolic switching from liver glucose to free fatty acid or ketones. You're also going to get stress resistance. So cells are going to lead a coordinated adaptive stress response, specifically closer to the end of that 12 to 16 hour fast. So they're going to basically be more efficient at what they do, specifically with DNA repair. The health and aging implications. So I wanted to, I alluded to it earlier, but I wanted to draw the difference between caloric restriction versus intermittent fasting. And there were two studies with the scientist Harvey that were randomized controlled trials. And the scientists studied 100 women in both of the studies and found that the women who did intermittent fasting lost weight and improved some biomarkers. So the biomarkers that they improved, just to be specific, they had a greater increase to insulin sensitivity and a larger reduction in waist circumference, which is a predictor of cardiovascular health. The women who, so one group of women, intermittent fasting, another group, they reduced calories by 25% and just let them be on a diet. Both groups lost weight. The group that did intermittent fasting got those other health benefits. The group that just did caloric restriction did not. So I thought that was a pretty, I actually mentioned this to Janelle the other day because I thought that was a really big statistic for me. physical and cognitive. So memory improves. There's different links to insulin sensitivity, Alzheimer's, and cognitive diseases that all tend to point in the direction of higher systemic insulin, more bad things happening. So those two things kind of go together. And they actually found that running endurance improved in mice specifically. There are statistics that cite, I have a study that says young men who fast daily for 16 hours lost more fat during men who didn't fast daily but had the same caloric restriction. They gained more muscle mass as a result of resistance training. So the mice study is not just all of the physical benefits that you can get from intermittent fasting. Here's kind of like a laundry list. So you're going to have positive changes in blood pressure, resting heart rate variability, which I didn't put on there, but that's another one. LDL to HDL ratio, triglycerides, glucose regulation, insulin resistance and sensitivity, endurance, body composition, memory, and cognitive function. And you're going to see drops in oxidative stress, systemic inflammation, and you know that one. All right, so what's happening as far as the time window goes? 4 hours in, your insulin levels kind of come back to normal. 8 hours, your blood sugar returns to normal. That's why when you get blood sugar taken or fasting blood sugar, you do it in the morning after not eating for 8 hours before that. After 12 hours, you're shifting really close to ketosis. And then 16 plus hours, you have cell regeneration, which can last up to 24, but not in repeated bouts. In conclusion, I would try to avoid sugar and processed food when doing this. I would try not to snack during the day when possible outside of my eating window. I would pick a plan that works for me, and I'm going to go over that in a second in response to one of the questions is where's the best place to start? Philip asked that question. So I'm going to respond to pick a plan that works. And then, that's a typo. Don't eat or snack late at night. That's supposed to be one line. And I think that the reason that's in there is that you want to take advantage of the fasting hours when you're sleeping. So if you eat really close to bedtime, then you're going to have to wait really far upon waking in order to get your 16 hours, which is kind of really the goal to get a lot of that benefits if you're doing a daily fast. Now, here's an example of where it's might be okay to eat late at night. Let's say you're going to try one of the 24-hour fasts. Yeah, eat a big meal late at night and then break that fast. And I'm going to talk about the question as to how to break the fast because we had how to break the fast. And then break that fast the following day, late in the evening, 24 hours later. I think overwhelmingly what you eat is more important than when you eat, and that this is more than just skipping breakfast and getting rips, goodness. Skipping breakfast and getting ripped. It's tough and it's uncomfortable. And I wanted to bring this point up that anytime you go through a diet or an eating plan or an exercise plan that is going to elicit body composition change, or weight loss, or weight gain, you are going to have to deal with periods of being uncomfortable. I'm not saying you need to feel like you're starving or you're super bloated. If you're trying to gain weight or if you're fasting, you don't need to go into hallucinations. But you're going to be, I got a laugh out of that one. You're going to be a little uncomfortable because your body is trying to subconsciously keep itself at homeostasis. So you're going to have to kind of willpower yourself over some of those little humps. I'm going to do the stop share now. Let's see, we got a chat. There's a question. I am a fan of PowerPoint. Okay, well, there we go. I think I had transition. Oh, alter transition. I didn't have alter transition. I had the same transition. So I am going to go over some of the questions, and then I'm going to answer them the best I can. And if you guys have other questions, you can wait to the end and then you can say them, or you can type them in as we're going if you think you might forget them, and I'll try to get to them as they come up. And let me make sure that there's nothing in my notes that I missed from the presentation that I'm not going to talk about in the Q&A. I think I have it. I have a lot of intermittent fasting in here. All right, Q&A. Jeff asked, how important is nutrient timing? Well, I think this whole thing is nutrient timing. And a single calorie, that's a tiny bit of an exaggeration, but very few calories can break this fast. And even things that don't have calories can break part of the fast. And what I mean by that is you can get an elevated insulin response by having artificial sweeteners. Even though that they don't contain any calories, you're part of the benefits of the fasting are keeping your insulin levels regulated, and artificial sweeteners will knock that out. You could probably get away with a little bit of stevia. Cinnamon and nutmeg are also good ways to kind of get lemon to get tea or coffee palatable. But nutrient timing is the whole thing here. I don't know if that's exactly what the question's asking, but if it isn't, then you could specifically nutrients during your eating window, protein in the morning or in the evening. Okay. Your largest meal should probably be after your activity. And we'll talk about setting up a really good day, but protein and carb ratios highest post activity time. Minimize fat if you can, because it's going to have a regulating response on your insulin level, which you actually do want elevated during that specific window, just then. So a larger meal with more protein and carbs closer to activity, and then smaller meals throughout the rest of your eating window. I would not actually put my activity away from my eating window too much. Like if your eating window starts at 10 p.m. and you fast, I would try not to have activity level away from calories too much. Protein and carbs closer to the activity. I know Janelle's laughing at me. I guess I got that question answered. I'm not sure if I do or not.
I'm laughing at Frankie. Frankie's.
Okay. I don't know if I answered Jeff's question. I'll come back to it if not. Kyle asked, when should your last meal be prior to sleeping? So if we take a hypothetical and you say like, I want to do this 16-8 fast, if you can get your last meal 2 hours before you go to bed and you sleep for 7 hours, I know that's realistic for some, generous for others, low for others maybe, then you have 9 hours of your fast already done. So you have 2 hours before bed and then 7 hours, and then your 9 hours of your fast. If you're going 16, then you only need to make it 7 hours of the day. That's really the only I don't really think that there's a super negative effect of eating right before bed if you don't feel like indigestion in the middle of the night, which if you do, then eat a little bit earlier than that. But it's mostly about that sliding window of 16 hours of fasting. So do what's convenient for you, but use the time you're sleeping as part of your fast. I don't really know. When Rami does Ramadan, he flips it actually. But that would be like waking up in the middle of the night to eat and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily think that if you don't have to do that, that's the best idea. But use your sleep as part of your fast. What schedule is best for a regular person? Yeah, I think starting with the 16-8 is the easiest thing to do for a regular person. And you could think about eating relatively early in the evening, like before 8 p.m. And then if you get to 8 a.m., there's 12 hours. And then 4 more hours is lunch. You could train maybe before lunch, or you could eat lunch. It could be a smaller meal to break the fast. Then you could train in the afternoon and eat a larger meal after that. But I think that the 16-8 is just it's an easy way to do it. And it's like, it's a way, it's also kind of training your body not to like we said, graze, but the snacking late at night is a killer for a lot of people, I think. Amanda's not on the call, but she wanted me to address what's best fasting for long-term implications. I could not find great data past 2 years of intermittent fasting. So semantically, what we're talking about when we're talking about fasting, we're talking about a 16-8 window. We're talking about 2 days that have 500 calories to 700 calories compared to 5 days of the week with normal calories. Or we're talking about a maximum of 1 day of a 24-hour fast. When we ask what's sustainable, that's what we mean when we say sustainable. And research has shown that those are sustainable and give health benefits for at least 2 years. There has not been causational research past that. There has been correlative research past that, but I cannot definitively say that there are benefits past 2 years of those 3 aspects. Now, if you want to try like 1 day on, 1 day off, or some of these more crazy, like not out there, but more radical types of fasting, I do not find research that those are sustainable for very long at all. So be very careful with more aggressive fasting than we've talked about in this presentation. What are the benefits of intermittent fasting from Kathy? I hope that the presentation outlined them. Almost every health marker you can think of, except for like increasing body fat and lethargy, are going to be increased by intermittent fasting. The crux of it is that it's kind of tough. Most clients, before I got this study, which really kind of convinced me, I guess, I would use intermittent fasting if any of my former or current clients, I only have like 2 clients, are on the call, current clients, Jamie, I only have 2 current clients, are on the call. We talked about intermittent fasting as a convenience for lifestyle. So like, hey, I really don't have time to eat breakfast. All right, well, let's see if we can make this intermittent fasting kind of work. You don't really have a whole lot of physical labor and activity throughout the day, or you can wait till lunch, then maybe we'll try some intermittent fasting there. So is it 16-8 or 14-10 for women? I would recommend the 14-10, Kate. I think that studies have shown that women do not have as extreme of the benefits of men pushing past a 16-8 fast. And if you have any sort of medical conditions, again, let me give you the caveat that I am not a registered dietitian, and you should seek, if you have like hormonal issues, if you have thyroid issues, if you are pregnant, you should seek the advice of a registered dietitian, specifically about implementing nutrition protocols that go beyond kind of, normal sort of stuff. Why would someone consider intermittent fasting? Lifestyle, or maybe they've plateaued and they want to try something different. Maybe they've been trying to go farther down the hole of small meals to a point of exhaustion and frustration, thinking that they were doing the right thing for their metabolism, and now maybe they want to change or they want to shift. Maybe this is a good time for somebody to make a diet change because of the stay-at-home order. Those are reasons I could think someone would consider intermittent fasting. Again, not a registered dietitian, but pre-diabetic. The research is compelling. It shows that it helps with that. I would not say start if you're pre-diabetic. I would say approach a registered dietitian with this idea and see what they have to say about it. Can I drink coffee when intermittent fasting? Yes. Minus, like you can have like I said, nutmeg, stevia, a little, cinnamon, black coffee, green tea, any sorts of teas without sweetener. Don't add sweetener, don't add milk, don't add creamer. You could toe the line with heavy cream, but it's really tasty and it can become really addicting in your coffee, and you might not want to ever stop it. And I would rather just like not do that. I would rather just have no calories. Like, don't try to fiddle with what you can have. But yes, coffee and caffeine can help quite a bit. Essential amino acids can help. Yes, it is very good in coffee. Essential amino acids can help too with like a powder supplement, again, that's unflavored. A lot of the essential amino acids have like these delicious Jolly Rancher flavors. So that can spike your insulin. So be careful with that. Janelle asked, when breaking a fast, protein, like what's a good meal to break a fast? If it is a post-activity break, I think you should do a big meal consisting of mostly protein and carbohydrates. If it's not a post-activity break, like if it's a late in the evening, like I'm gonna maybe you fasted on a rest day and you're gonna break your fast late in the evening. I think a smaller meal with some fat, so it sits in the stomach a little bit. It takes a little longer to digest. You feel a little bit more full, and then that hunger response starts to come back instead of like eating too much, like eating too many carbs. And then you go past full and you feel bloated and you're sick, you get indigestion, and then it's hard to kind of do your eating in your eating window. So to answer your question, Janelle, when breaking a fast post-exercise, I would eat a bigger meal with less fat. And when breaking a fast non-post-exercise, I would eat a smaller meal with higher fat. Should women have concerns about fasting? Yes, more so than men. And like I said, I would definitely check with your doctor, and definitely don't do this if you're pregnant or nursing, unless your OBGYN specifically happens to be an RN and says this is a good idea. And I cannot imagine a case where that would happen. But I am neither one of those things. So let me just look through and see if there's anything else that I wanted to mention before I take questions. My article pages are all out of order. 5, 6, 7. Okay. Yeah, I just want to say one more time that what about drinking alcohol during the eating window? We had a question, what about drinking alcohol during the eating window? Alcohol is going to have whatever effects alcohol has, but if you are going to drink it during the eating window, it's definitely better than during the fasting window, if that makes sense. I could do a whole thing on alcohol's effects of the body, but I think that I wouldn't get a lot of attendance because I don't think people want to hear what I would have to say. I wouldn't want to have to present it to you because then I would feel guilty myself for the choices that I'm making. So, does anyone have any questions? You feel free to unmute yourself. Or ask
Brandon, I have a question.
Yes, Ingrid.
So I tried intermittent fasting and I thought it was like very doable. My problem is I can only work out at 5:30 in the morning. And so, oh great, now I have a screaming child. Anyway, is there a problem with like waking up so early and then not being able to eat until 12 or 1?
I think that if you're doing a CrossFit workout or a hour of cardiorespiratory endurance training, you would be okay. If I think that if you're doing like, maybe like if you did the class, if you did only Ingrid and then the class, then I think it might be a little bit tougher. And I would say try to push your dinner a little bit earlier if you could. John Kiefer has a book that talks a little bit about fasting called Carb Backloading and Carb Night. And what he suggests for the person who has an early session like that is to kind of have like 2 mini fasting windows. This is a little bit off topic, but basically you would fast the evening, right? You would fast in the evening, you would exercise, you would have a little bit of calories to kind of put back in the glycogen top off and a little bit of protein to prevent, the cannibalization of aminos. And then you would kind of fast again until nighttime. So it would be like, I think I'm going to butcher the numbers, but I think he said somewhere just around like 30 grams of carbs, 15 grams of protein, or something really small is all it took to kind of prohibit those catabolic effects. And then you go your day, and then you can eat, 4 p.m. or later in the evening or something like that. Does anyone have another question?
Yes, Brandon, I have a question.
Yes, Pablo.
So I'm back to counting macros, and my base numbers are based on my TDEE. When using an 8-hour eating window, I still have to eat the same amount of calories that I would if I wasn't doing intermittent fasting, correct?
So this is a really great question, Pablo, and Janelle brought it up the other day. If you're setting up a plan today and you know your caloric intake and you're doing a 16-8, yes, I would try to sandwich all of those calories into an 8-hour eating window. That being said, if you're already eating, like I'm already eating, I'm not really weighing and measuring, and you go to like a 5-2, where you are eating normally for 5 days and lower for 2 days, do not try to gorge yourself on those 5 days. Like, just kind of let your normal hunger take you where it wants to go, or stick with your macros. But if you're laying out a 16-8 plan, yeah, I would try to get the macros inside of your 8-hour window, because it's not super tight. Like, it's not like a 24 window where you're just basically sitting at the table for 4 hours eating, trying to get those macros in that window. Does that help answer your question?
Absolutely. And also, not just for this talk, but for the other talks, can you mention the effects of energy drinks, specifically the ones that are zero energy drinks, no calories, no sugar, no all that stuff? I know they're artificially sweetened. How would that affect intermittent fasting, to be more specific to this talk?
Well, it would mostly, like, we would assume that we wouldn't be, would a 0-calorie energy drink that has an artificial sweetener in it, sweet enough to taste sweet, in a fasting window, bother your intermittent fasting? Is that your question? Kind of?
Yeah. For this talk, yes.
I think it would, because it would stimulate a little bit of insulin response, regardless if there is a caloric response. So there are other benefits of the intermittent fasting happening in addition to a lower insulin, a lower overall insulin level, but which you would still probably get, Pablo. But once you broke that insulin barrier, your insulin would spike with like just the taste of sweetness. Stevia has kind of the lowest glycemic index of artificial sweetener. It's not really a glycemic index, but the lowest insulin response of artificial sweeteners. So I think a lot of the drinks that we have at the gym are stevia. I think the O2 is sugar alcohol. I would have to look back and check. But I do think that a very sweet energy drink would have an effect, a similar, like a little bit of a breaking of a fast effect, if that helps answer the question. I could do one on on energy drinks from top to bottom, because there's so many different, I mean, there's like, just as far as sweeteners go, like you can have a high fructose corn syrup, you can have regular sugar, you can have artificial synthetic sweeteners like saccharin and sucralose, you could have stevia, you could have you could have a 0 calorie, like with no sweet taste. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. That's a good question, though. If energy drinks is something people want to talk about, I think people know my affinity for Red Bull. So,
Brandon,
yes.
is there any difference somebody should take in reference to being 50 years old and 25 years old?
That's a good question, Pablo. I mean, Kyle, right? That's a good question, Kyle.
All us military guys look the same. It's okay.
Yeah, the other 50-year-old of the group.
I did not come across anything that told me that people with advanced age should not do this. And I'm not saying 50 is advanced age. I'm just like, dude, I'm 40, man.
Thanks a lot, Brandon.
Even though I had my birthday during the quarantine, so it doesn't count, and I'm really 39. I think that the only studies that I saw of stuff where people were up there were the cognitive studies, and they only showed benefits. So I think, Kyle, that it would probably be just fine regardless of your age. It might actually be maybe even more beneficial if some of those typical body functions are slowing down anyway, and they're slowing down further because we have systemic inflammation and elevated insulin. Doing something like this when you're 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60 might be even better for you. Check out the primal diet. He's definitely late in the 60s. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Good old Mark Sisson.
What about one other question? What about someone who is basically stuck in a high temperature situation for 8 to 12 hours a day, like at 120 degrees plus, and that's my eating window?
Well,
I know it's a very specific question.
I'll be frank with you. The more protein you eat, protein has a higher thermogenic effect. So you're going to get hot, specifically if it's like protein that's denser and less like easily digestible than like you're going to get hot. Like your body temperature is going to go up. I don't know what I mean, it's just going to be uncomfortable to try to get those calories in, I guess, Kyle. Like, I don't know. Is that help? I mean, what do I think about someone who has to do that? I think it will be hard.
Yeah. So it's just been my experience. I did intermittent fasting. I did this whole 8-16 for a year.
Yes.
And during that time was in the summer.
Share everybody what your results were.
What?
Share with everybody how it turned out.
I lost 26 pounds over a 1 year period that was sustainable, but it was pure heck to try and actually take in calories when I was getting temperatures in the vehicle at plus 120 degrees. It was everything I could do basically just to try and shove calories into my mouth.
I don't know if I can let her out. Sorry, my lab wants to go outside, but we sprayed the lawn, so I don't know if she's allowed to. So maybe she'll pee on the floor. I'm not sure. You can say that. Hell. Oh. Yeah. I just think it would be tough, Kyle. If you let me marinate on it for a little bit longer, I can maybe. All right, I'm gonna let you out. I can maybe think about some suggestions and like tips that could be helpful. I would be concerned about, and I know you are. I know you're really good about this because I remember the 10s unit product you had and stuff like that. But like, definitely make sure you supplement with unflavored electrolytes as well as water.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, What else? Anything else? I'm asking my wife if the dog can go outside right now.
So basically you're saying like during your fasting process, the best thing to do is, if you need, is just drinking water.
Tea?
Anything that's non-caloric.
Yeah, tea. There's a little bit of like an appetite suppressant in tea, and then caffeine. If it's something that has caffeine, if it's green tea or something like that, it has like a further appetite suppressant. So that could be really helpful. If you're in the hot car, right? It sounds like I'm almost contradicting myself, but if you're in the hot car, be careful with that because, well, you wouldn't be appetite suppressing in the hot car.
No.
Because it wouldn't be during your fasting window, but just like be careful for dehydration. If you're crushing a bunch of caffeine and tea, drink water too. That's a nice looking dog.
Is there any issues, or did you read anything in studies of people doing intermittent fasting that are also smokers?
I did not.
Okay. I just wondered if there was anything that had a correlation because of the fact that nicotine is in reference to a suppressant too in regards to your eating.
So you're smoking?
No, I'm not smoking.
Okay.
I just thought it was a legit question in regards to like.
I don't know.
Should I start smoking? Because that'll help my eating habit, right?
I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that question. I think smoking is probably bad. Who is smoking?
Smoking is definitely bad.
The virus smoking, man. Anything else?
I think Chad's starting to smoke.
Chad?
Chad back now.
I just wanted to say smoking is absolutely bad.
Thank you, Dr. Chad, for the contribution to the nutrition talk.
Yep.
I'm joking, but Chad really turned me on to this article, which turned me on to the other 80 articles that were the meta-analysis. So that's why I really kind of
that New England Journal article is really well done. And if anybody would like to nerd out, I can send over that article, pretty recent, with some pretty robust data and a good background, I would say. And then one thing, I've been doing intermittent fasting myself for a while, and I want to echo what you said, Brandon, about the unflavored electrolytes, because what I would do is just drink a lot of coffee in the morning, like just a cup of coffee, and then an hour later, I just felt like I was drinking a ton of coffee. And I felt like it kind of got me a little bit out of whack, like electrolyte balance, like hydration status a little bit. Plus I was like completely like unfed state, very over caffeinated. So like I was super jittery. So I have found that is another good thing to consume, that will, with, I guess, making sure that it's unflavored and not artificially sweetened. But that is something that I have felt has been a big help to sort of quell a little bit of issues that I was having.
Chad, are you doing a 16-8 or what are you doing?
Yeah, 16-8. It just depends on if I'm working or not, because if I'm working, then I'm up like really, really early, and I may or may not even have an opportunity to eat during the daytime. So it actually may even extend further than that. So some days, like, for example, in the fall, there were a couple of days in a row where I just was in the operating room all day long, like literally all day. And it turned into like a 20-4 just on accident. But most days I would try to do the 16-8 because it works. It just seems to work best for me.
We got into a tangent about vaping down there. Sorry.
Hey, Brandon, real quick, a question that just popped into my head. So if you're intermittent fasting, doing a 16-8, and then one day you just can't, and you break that fast, or you break that cycle? Does it take a couple of days to get back into it? Or does it matter?
I think that you can get into it immediately, because the minute you stop eating, your body starts re-regulating itself. So 4 hours after your last meal, your insulin level is down. 8 hours after your last meal, your blood sugar is normal again. So you could just start it right back up, Pablo. That's a great question.
You will probably experience more discomfort the more sporadic your timing is, based on that question. Like if you go randomly one day and the next day you're able to do it, you may feel hungrier and you may feel your feeling of discomfort with your hunger or anything like that. It may be a little bit increased if your diet with the intermittent fasting is more random than more consistent.
Thank you for the input, Chad. I didn't know you were intermittent fasting. That's helpful to have that.
I know that.
You can talk, Kyle.
When I started and I first went into to ketosis, I almost felt like I had the flu. I don't know if anybody else has had that. Yeah, keto flu. Yeah, Tanya did keto style diet for years, and when I started that whole thing, she didn't let me know, and I was like, geez, I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm really coming down with something, but I didn't say anything until it took another day before, or maybe even longer than another day before I actually started feeling normal again. But once that first wave was done, I was fine with after. There wasn't any issues, even when I was going into ketosis during the fast.
I don't want that to go. I want that to go to everybody. Sorry, Kate asked a question about. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kyle. Kate asked a question about LaCroix, and I'm not typing it to the answer to everybody. I wanted to. I don't really know. LaCroix is weird. I'm not exactly sure if you do have an insulin response, because it's not super sweet and there's no calories in it. So I would have to do a little bit more research on LaCroix. But thank you for bringing that up, because now I will find out more about LaCroix. And then Kyle, I'm sorry to cut you off. Can you continue? What were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying that I was also, working at doing keto. So after that first initial, after that first initial,
you might
almost 2 days. It was fine after that.
It lasted for 2 days for you?
Just about, before I felt like I was back to normal again. It was tough to even work out. It was like having the flu. It was just weird.
You didn't say anything, so I didn't help.
I know, and I didn't tell anybody.
So you're not in ketosis all the time. So you're just in ketosis or close to ketosis, or burning fat for energy more of the time. So I don't think that you might have about 2 weeks of discomfort, or maybe some lethargy, some headaches, some stuff that doesn't feel right. But I don't think you would have as significant of an impact of reaction of going to straight ketosis for a long period of time or permanently. That's probably what I think about that. I think that if you are doing this and you are doing 16-8 and you feel like a keto flu or something more significant, you might kind of want to watch what's going on. The issues, they're there and you have to overcome them, but they shouldn't be debilitating. I guess. I mean, I say that, and I've had some headaches during some ketosis experiments that were not extremely pleasant. But I think that if you want to do intermittent fasting starting tomorrow, you probably don't have to worry about 2 days of feeling like you have the flu. And I think that obviously right now we don't want to feel like we have the flu because, you know, or maybe you do, and then you go get antibody tested and find out I don't know. I don't want to go down that road, but I appreciate the perspective about that, Kyle. All right, so LaCroix, I'll make sure to look up that. Does anybody have anything else? Nice, Molly. You know they actually have this like LaCroix hybrid now from Trader Joe's that has like 15% juice, and it has like 12 calories in it, and it's like LaCroix plus like a splash of orange juice.
The funny thing is, I have not had a LaCroix, and like it's been sitting in my refrigerator for like 3 months, and I was like, I'm gonna have one of these instead of a glass of wine tonight.
Great.
Now I have 2 of these.
I don't feel like sparkling water. Oh, Frankie. Obviously, if Frankie's drinking that flavored stuff, then it probably doesn't kick insulin too much. What was I going to say about LaCroix? I don't find it like thirst quenching. I find when I drink bubbly stuff, I feel bloated and I don't feel like it quenches my thirst. That's just me.
So there are no negative aspects to just drinking a carbonated water, like a soda stream. You make your own carbonated water.
No. Carbonated water should be fine. Throw a lemon in it or a cucumber or something. You'll be okay. If you want.
Cool.
Well, I'm happy to take some more questions. I see the interaction, the input from you guys is great. That's kind of what drove, I think, the better part of this presentation. I think that I've got some ideas. You're welcome to still communicate via writing on the wall or direct messaging me on Facebook. If you want to hear a specific topic next week or moving, maybe we do this even when we open back up. But then you can communicate that to us, and I'd love to try to tackle it. Some things I know about, a lot of things I don't, but I will find out more about it, and I will present that information to you. Sound checking. One time I drank a 6-pack of LaCroix at midnight. It did weird things to my body. Probably bottom burped for quite a bit. Bye, Molly. Bottom burped, yeah. That's what we say around here. It means, Louise knows what it means. It's like a European way of saying like farting, right, Louise? Bottom burp, is that right? All right. Do y'all have anything else? Tomorrow we have a workout with me, I think at 4:30. Yeah, I taught that today. It was fun. I have Phil has trivia. Coach Phil has trivia at 8 p.m. Tomorrow night, which I think is going to be fun. I like when we can do some social stuff. And then Janelle is going to come back on Saturday morning with 2 classes this Saturday or 1?
9.
I'm doing 9.
I'm doing 9. You're doing 10.
Okay. So Janelle and I will
be
fine, yeah. Janelle and I will be doing Saturday's workout too. So we have a couple of Zoom things to look forward to. I really appreciate everybody's time. I hope this was helpful. And I'd love to see all of you all either in class and or on bingo tomorrow night. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
Like this, Frankie. You got to pump it. Face on the side. Pump it. Louder.
attention to Janelle. She's gone crazy.
Bye, Ingrid. Good to see you. Go take care of those crazy kids.
The meatballs were delicious. Brooke said they were the best he'd ever had.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
The burned meat.